best decision?
Well, I think I've got two answers, and the first answer is deciding to have the fourth child. That was, we had brought. Did we? I think we. It was 4 years apart, and so it was 4 years of waiting, and we had decided that if we didn't get pregnant at the end of, before that we just take it as a sign that we weren't supposed to do it. And it really was almost the last month when I found out I was pregnant. So that was a really good decision. But the other one that I wrote down, I learned to educate myself. School was just a get through situation, but first I went to the library and I read pretty much every romance novel there was. So then I decided
that's the wrong education.
I wanted to have a, get to educate myself. So I started taking the self-help books, but primarily, and the stuff about kids, and raising kids, and I read probably 100 of those kind of books, a lot of it. And I would talk, of course, to Grandpa about the different things and what was practical to do and what was a good idea, what wasn't a good idea. And it was actually the information back then was really good information. And now it's not. So I would not recommend to anybody that they go to the library and pick up those kinds of books. But that's what my first one was The Act of Marriage, and that book is really a good book for the husband-wife relationship, probably the best one. And then the Act of Marriage was another, or I said that one. The self-help books and tapes on child rearing. Then I gathered up everything, and I took. Boy, I listened to tapes, but I mostly read books, and there was not, now there's so many of them, but I read almost every book that they had on self-help and raising children. And also then at that time we started to realize that Jody, at the time you didn't know what ADD was, and they didn't call it that at the time. It was hyperactive disorder. And so when I started knowing about that, I started trying to get information on it, but there really was not much. It was a whole new field. People didn't understand the complexity of it, didn't understand what you could do to help. And then I'm reading these books, but at the same time, I am learning what works and what doesn't work with training this child. And honestly, having Dale be so strong, the kids just didn't mess around with their dad. So that was kind of a nice balancing thing, because Jody had to discipline himself to do the things that he needed to do. And that training also, then other people, I don't know how word gets around, but somehow or another you talk to somebody. And so then people started asking me, what would you do? What kind of books to get? Are there tapes around? Could you recommend this or that? So in my grade school now, at Arbor Heights, there were probably, was it 2 classes of kids? Like first grade had 2 first grades. Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, like that. And
2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes 3. And because again, I'm learning all this stuff, I worked and got myself in there to get Jody, a strict teacher, and because I was also at the same time working with people, the teachers, they were happy to accommodate me because I'm a room mother and I'm doing all this various stuff. So that was valuable in itself. That if you help people and made yourself valuable to them, they would be very willing to accommodate you and your needs. So that was really good. And then because I was doing that, the principal wanted me to deal with the PTA situation, because the PTA, I think I mentioned this once before, but hardly any. You got 5 or 6, maybe a dozen people coming to the PTA meetings. Now this is, remember, 2 full schools of potential parents, and it just wasn't valuable. And when I started going, I was going, well, yeah, I wouldn't waste my time coming here. There's nothing here. It was kind of like a little not good tea party.
What year was that?
Jody was 5, 6, 7. What year was that, Dale?
That was me, yeah. Probably 60, 69, 70, yeah.
Maybe in there. And there was nothing. There was nothing around about ADD at the time. And so what happened was, when we started doing the classes, and I knew nothing. So you just start from nothing. But I was going, there's got to be somebody that can talk about this, that can come and give a good. And at the time, there was a lot of people, a ton of people that were reading a book that was written by Chaim Ganot about ADD kids, only kind of one there was. And but you would never get someone like him. But there were a couple of people that had got themselves positioned to do the same teaching. So I managed to get that person. So that started then them. I didn't want to be a PTA like person, but that set me up to do the programming for the PTA. So I started then that. Of course, then I enlarged myself and educate myself in order to find people, and I was very shy and absolutely afraid of authority when I first started, but because I educated myself, I could talk to these people, and of course they thought at that time that was all new, so I was very credible in what I was saying. So that started with the PTA, and then it started with getting classes for the ADA parents that needed the extra help, which ended up being great. And then my principal wanted me to talk to other principals. See, I started out terrified of authority, and to even think about, doing this, but I knew what I was talking about. And so then there was like 4 principals that came in, 4 or 5 principals that came in, and I talked to them to educate them on the ADD issue and how it worked and all that kind of stuff. So, and then it went to inner healing counseling and the Christian school kind of at the same time. But the inner healing thing was really life-changing for people that just were wounded but didn't know how to fix themselves or their spouses or whatever. And you realize back then there was no information. So this is starting from scratch or very little information. So that started the inner healing counseling, and then the Christian school started at the same time. So there's people then not just from our own church, which I don't know what the attendance was around back then, 100, 120 people maybe. And the school got to be about that size eventually, but I think it started out at about maybe 30 and went on,
Yeah.
if you
We
think.
had over
Yeah.
100 at one time.
Yeah, yeah. So it just kind of grew. So then the Christian school outlet, then I started, and then when I'm talking to the husband, you got to bring the husband and wife relationship in to the parenting, because there was a lot of the time, there was a lot of, that was their biggest issue, was the friction there. And of course, mothers are being really liberal and mad at the husband if they were disciplining. And it was so it was a kind of dangerous thing to do, because, you know, who am I? I'm nobody, and I'm going to tell you what to do with your kids. But the school gave me a prestige that I'm the principal of the school, and so people would listen to me. So then it ballooned to me spending a lot of time counseling husbands and wives, which extended up until my diagnosis with the whatever it's called. And so I guess that's it.
Yeah, that's it. But the amazing thing about you in this is that you read a lot and you were able to retain it. And
Yeah.
her memory was second to none. I've never met another person that had a memory like she did during this period of time, all through her counseling. She could counsel, I don't know, probably 20 or more people all the time, and have their conversations remembered when they came in
It's true.
a month later or 2 months later, as to what they said and how did you do on this and the follow-up. And she always spoke the truth. And so a lot of guys are not used to women speaking the truth to them,
Yeah.
or with
At
a
that
sense of
time.
humor. And so she could get through to them where maybe their wives or somebody else couldn't. She was really good at counseling men. I can take credit for that. I've given you all the topics.
Absolutely. That's right.
Anyway, to go on to my part of this, today is kind of a milestone anniversary for us, in that this is the day that I stopped by Darlene's house when she was married to Ron, and she was going into labor, and so I took her to the hospital.
Right.
And so,
And if he hadn't, it was a very good chance I was going to die.
anyway,
No
I took her to
phone,
the hospital,
nothing.
and it happened to be
Really quick, today is December 19th.
right. Jody's birthday.
Yep.
Didn't take her long. Anyway, so after I dropped her off at the hospital, it was a Wednesday night. Wednesday night is open gym at the high school. So we'd already graduated and everything, but I knew Ron was at the open gym playing basketball. So I went to Jody's father, her husband at the time, and says, I just dropped your wife off at the hospital. She's having a baby. You might want to go and check on her. And so that was my role in that,
But thank God
which is kind of unusual.
and you saved my life, and that's happened more and more, various times.
But as far as the best decisions I've ever made, that was one of them, that I married you. I know that we were best friends all through high school. We flirted with each other, wrote letters back and forth and everything else, but we were never boyfriend and girlfriend. We're
Right.
always just good friends, but we love to teach each other and have fun. She created most of my embarrassing moments in high school. I know there was one time when, just before the bell was ringing at study hall, all the people were in study hall, we were in the doorway, we were talking, regular conversation, the bell rang, she kissed me and ran away. So everybody was watching us in the doorway. Another embarrassing moment. But anyway, when she married Ron, I was kind of rudderless for a while because as a freshman in high school, I had a vision of what it would be like being married to her. And we talked about it. I wrote her letters about it all the time. But it was just something that I knew there was something there that I wanted and knew how it was going to turn out. And it has turned out that way. So then when she got married to Ron, I just kept in contact with her. One of the neat things that when I was going to college at Centralia, in a speech class, I talked about training people to drive. And so I had a kid in class that came up to me and says, "Hey, I need to get a driver's license." He's somewhat disabled in his movement of his hands and feet, but he was functional fine. And I says, "I can teach you how to drive." And so I says, "Here's what we'll do. I'll just take you out and teach you how to drive." And so we would drive around. Well, I'd pick him up at the college and we'd go driving around. I'd go to Little Rock and stop and see Darlene. And so there were times when I'd just turn him loose after he could drive. You go out here and drive around out in the woods or out on the back roads and come back home and back here in 15, 20 minutes. And so I'd stop and see her. So that's why I was kind of in touch with her at the time she was having a baby.
Right.
Because I was going to college and stopped by to see her. And that time I was by myself, but still. And the second thing was moving Seattle. Moving from
Yep,
Seattle.
absolutely.
The best decision I ever made, because that just opened up a whole lifestyle and a whole field of different experiences that helped me and helped the kids. If I stayed in Seattle, I would probably still be building houses and that sort of thing, and it would become boring, and I get bored pretty easily. So down here on the farm and all the stuff, the kids and activities, it was the best decision. So that was great.
Yep.